it's quite an emerging trend in terms of the public knowing about it or even having the right words for it. It was actually quite interesting, trying to find guests. There was quite an interesting discovery that I made that in South Africa, there are very few experts on the subject. Many of them are not in South Africa. So it was quite exciting to find Emile and Kim, who are specialists at this, because it can be quite challenging to find experts in South Africa who have this amount of depth on the subject. So, a lot of people during Mental Health Awareness Month, which was last month, which this webinar is meant to, honor and celebrate in recognition. A lot of international communities were talking about neurodivergence. And so I think it's very poignant that we also in South Africa, we enter this discussion. So what really drove us to choose neurodivergence is, neurodivergence really looks at various kind of mental conditions. And I say mental conditions and not mental health. And we will get into why that is. Because at the moment there is a sort of conversation around the dichotomy. Is it a mental health discussion or is it a completely different mental condition kind of conversation? So what neurodivergence really looks at is the way in which the brain is formed and how it looks, physically looks, and the kind of neural pathways that make that up and therefore make up the way in which it functions. And so that means it directly, implicates or includes or affects how people think, behave, and perform. And it also sort of verges on the idea of personalities. And it is so important that we understand this, particularly in the context of the workplace, because often the workplace is making a lot of judgments about people's personality, people's competencies, people's behavior, and all of these are basically assumptions that are made on people's being, really. And so it's really looking at the scope at which we come in the workplace, and we come as fully fledged people. We don't come as parts of ourselves. We come as fully embodied beings into the space of the workplace. And so that also really means who we are is how our brain functions partially, and that it is changeable, but it is how we do function. It is the seat of our behavioral patterns. And so it's very important that I think we understand this, and we've got experts today to be helping us talk about this in great depth. So welcome to everybody else who has just joined in. I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. We've got Dr. Emile Gouws, and he is a PhD candidate who is currently working at the University of South Africa. He focuses on inclusive education. And really what he's looking at is, what does the institutional education system look like, and how is it institutionally designed that is innately discriminatory? And so the methodology with which he used is called autoanthology. It's wait, what is it? Yes, okay. Autoanthology. There we go. And what really that is, and I love this study, and I first came across it just reading your thesis, Dr. Emile Gouws, which I'll share with everybody. I actually read the whole thesis, but it's really focuses on how you use your own biography, really, your own autobiography, and using that as an academic science to study about what the reality of your life is and how it contributes to the bigger scheme of academia. And so he has autism, as you will further learn. And so his study was really about, as a student with autism entering into UNISA, what were the barriers that he faced? And so we look at that model and we are juxtaposing it into the workplace, because innately institutions are designed with the same kind of discriminatory, patriarchal, ableist, sexism, whatever isms it is that really institutions are framed around. And he has done incredible work for South Africa. He's currently working with the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, who are working in conjunction with the UNDP in South Africa. And what they're working on is, one of the things he's working on is looking at the UNDP country document and looking to their mission in South Africa and how it really correlates to us moving and propelling our implementation of the UNRCPD, or the United Nations Convention on Rights on Persons with Disabilities, along with our other human rights that are aligned with disability. So there's quite a lot of work that he's doing there currently. He is also going to be speaking at Investec this afternoon, so we're really excited. He'll be delivering a keynote address, and then later on this evening again, he'll be going to an event with Ms. Kim Hicks. So that is just a background on him. I'm now going to speak about Kim Hicks, our next speaker. Kim Hicks is an activist in her own right. She has done a lot of work around neurodiversity and also advocating for parents with children with various impairments, but all types of neurodivergence. She started this work, I mean, years ago. She has, and she'll probably tell you the story, but she's got a household of neurodivergent individuals, and so that in its own is a wealth of experience that many cannot say they have. And often we like to rate certain experiences as more worthy than others, but she's a phenomenal individual who has walked the cause of really educating people when Popuda came out, really harnessing and implementing the disability rights in South Africa, looking at how it can be implemented in the scope of looking at the various educational spaces that we find ourselves in, the kind of capacity and understanding of the various neurodivergent conditions. She does also come from a teaching background, so that has also influenced her proactive advocacy around it. She also is Dr. Emile and Sammy's carer. She'll also let you know a little bit more about that, but they have been on this journey of continuously broadening the space of disability inclusion in South Africa and really creating that movement. And so I'm really honored to introduce the two of them today. This is going to be a fantastic conversation. And Kim will be talking to us really about understanding what neurodivergence is. What are the conditions? What are the strengths? We're really trying to hone in focusing on the zones of genius, because I think a lot of the time people hear mental health conditions and they think, oh, crazy, can't have them in the workplace, unstable. And so that is a very, very far from the truth image. And so what we want to do is show you what it is, that the bare bones of what it is defined as, really tell you what these generic outlines are. And then you'll see as they, present and as we discuss, that it's actually not as black and white as it looks on the piece of paper. But also it's really about, we are people. These are just words. These are just characteristics. What I want us to come with into this dialogue is to come with curiosity. More than anything, curiosity. If you came in with some judgment, I ask that you put it outside and close the door. But just really some curiosity into exploring the nature of neurodivergence, the various conditions that will be spoken about. And you'll also realize that what it is seen or heard to be said through words is very different in how it turns out. So I'm really excited about both of the presentations. I am now going to introduce Dr. Emile Gouws, who will be presenting his topic, also looking at not just neurodivergence in the institution, but also looking at policy, looking at the policy implications, looking at the relevance in the workplace, telling us a little bit more about the national and the international space around that. So just quickly for housekeeping, Nasia, my colleague, will be helping us flight the slides. And if anybody has comments, please do feel free to drop them in the comments. How this will work is Emile will present his presentation. We will then have a question and answer session afterwards. We really like having dialogues in our webinars. So please, if you have questions, don't just drop them in there. And then once Dr. Emile is done, we will then read through the questions and we'll answer them and have that dialogue. And then we will then introduce Kim. Kim will start with hers. Kim and I, may somebody please mute themselves? Thank you. And then Kim will then have her presentation. And we thought that maybe it would be also better if that part is in a conversational dialogue, because it really talks about the bare bones of the condition. So we really want to humanize it, right? So that will be a bit of a back and forth conversation. And yeah, so then Dr. Gouws, please feel free to begin. I'm just going to ask everybody to please mute themselves. All right. Nasia, I don't know if we have access to.
Am I the only person that cannot hear Abs at the moment? Abs, can you please unmute yourself?
She's been muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry. Sorry, I muted everybody, but I didn't realize you would also get muted. I'm sorry, I must apologize.
No, that's fine. Okay, so you can mute everyone. That's perfect. Okay, so so I just want to also mention, while we were doing this, sometimes in the DEIB space, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space, it's really also a journey about learning and unlearning. And even in the way in which you bring knowledge and you share and have these conversations with people, you also have to be unlearning and relearning. And so for me, it's always this process of learning, unlearning, developing, growing, and undoing. And so doing this, I also really realized that neurodivergent individuals, it's very important for us, and we'll get to why I say us in the presentations, that we actually have breaks. So this is a 2.5 hour conversation. So what we will do is we will have a presentation from Dr. Emile Gouws. We'll have a question and session discussion, and then we'll have a 5-minute break. And then we'll then introduce Kim, and then we will continue the conversation. And this is because of how the brain functions. It cannot take so much information all at once. And also because of how some of our brains are and how they function, it is actually very polite and actually very needed to give breaks. So with that, I'm going to ask Nasia to please lead Dr. Emile Gouws as he does his presentation. Dr. Gouws, if you just need the slides to be moved, just please let Nasia know and then she will flight them as needed. Thank you. You are muted. Please unmute.
Yeah.
Um, Hi.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
that's
fine.
fine.
You are muted. Sorry, doctor, you are muted.
Okay, good day. Can you hear me? Good morning.
Yes, we
loud
can
and
hear
clear.
you now.
Thank you.
Morning. Sure. Can you put your sound off?
It's off.
Okay, can you go? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Doc.
Okay, can you go? Hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can. We can
Okay.
go ahead.
So
Emile.
just a final check. Can you? Just a final check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Your
can.
sound off.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Should I just
Should
go
I
off
just
mine
go off mine? Yes.
and
Yes.
go back on?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go off. I'm leaving.
Okay.
Apologies. We're just sorting out the echoes.
No worries. When you're ready.
Is all okay now? Okay. Well, good morning.
Why is it echoing? No, maybe it's echoing. I need to get out of here. Okay, go on.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear,
Yes,
Emile.
we
We didn't
can.
hear an echo. So don't worry about it. You can go ahead.
No, Abby, it's echoing back at him. He can't talk like this.
Oh, okay. All right. Now I hear you.
So you go out and go back in.
Just a suggestion, the second joiner, mute your mic and your speaker, then you'll stop the echoing.
Sorry, can you say that again slowly because it's echoing back at him and we can't hear you.
Okay, so if you join twice and the two devices are in the same space, on one of the devices, mute your mic and your speaker.
Okay, so I have gone out of Teams completely. My computer is closed and dead. So this is Emile's computer issue as well. So let's go out, Baby, and let's rejoin.
Okay. Can I quickly go out and rejoin?
Please go ahead. Feel free. I'd just like to explain. So, Emile, Dr. Emile has autism, and so the level of tolerance to noise distraction that we would. Pardon, Kim?
He's back.
I'm back. Okay.
Perfect.
There's no echo. Brilliant. Okay.
Awesome. Great.
Apologies
Go
for that. I think, there was a problem on my side because I joined from the internet and I joined from the app. So apologies for that, but thank you very much for advice and good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience and we can start officially. Apungile, thank you so much for that brilliant invitation and your brilliant introduction. I truly appreciate it and I truly appreciate all of our efforts in creating awareness, and both of us are so honored to be able to have this platform to do advocacy. We make a potent combination where we basically advocate from a personal experiences, we bring in statistics, we bring in the academia, but also we basically humanize it so that we make it relatable. And so it's such an honor for me. Now, to refer to the UNCRPD, I need to introduce myself correctly, the appropriate way. So good morning, my name is Dr. Emile Gouws. I am a 31-year-old autistic adult. I'm a white man. I've got ash blonde hair, short cutted. I've got a white shirt on. I've got a brown pants on, and yeah, when you look, especially when you look at inclusivity, accessibility, you know, we need to introduce ourselves in that way, referring to UNCRPD. But today, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and friends, today I stand before you not just as a voice. We are not standing in front of you as a voice for ourselves, but as advocates for a vibrant and diverse community that has often been marginalized. Mugile, you said a lot of correct things that basically agree with you 100% that we are part of marginalized group, and therefore we look particularly at drawing from both of our experiences and insights. We want to discuss the importance of
Sorry, you're breaking up.
representation, understanding, and action in fostering and understanding. Can you hear me now?
It is a little bit choppy, but continue. Let's see.
Well, look, in worst case scenario, I can put off my camera as well. Because we feel
Yeah, perhaps
Uh,
perhaps that will help. Yeah, you can do that.
Okay. Abby, you're also breaking up for us.
okay, will that work now? Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, it's better now. Okay, thank you very much. So I basically address myself based on the UNCRPD where I where I basically refer how I look. I'm a white male with ash blonde hair, with a blue shirt, with brown pants.
White shirts, actually.
Oh, sorry. White shirt. White shirt with brown pants. And I'm a 31-year-old autistic adult. And what you said today is often true when you look particularly at why autistic adults and the field of neurodiversity is part of the underrepresented groups. So, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and friends, today we stand before you not just as a voice for ourselves, but as advocates for a vibrant and diverse community that is often been marginalized, especially those individuals on the autism spectrum. Drawing from our experiences and insights, I want to discuss the importance of representation, understanding, and action in fostering inclusive societies for all neurodiverse individuals. And therefore, we will only refer in my presentation, well, we will not only we'll look at the literature, the academia, but also looking at the practical, you know, referring to how we see it as autistic adults, how we perceive society, how we cope in different environments. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, there we go. So firstly, let's reflect on our contributions. Now, this is some lovely pictures. As you would see on the top, my thesis, my name of my thesis is on top, which I completed in 2022. I graduated last year with my PhD. I'm currently in a postdoctoral fellowship where I'm basically employed at the Department of Inclusive Education. And this thing about the postdoctoral fellowship is all about preparing me for the role for academia as well. And also for me to be able to publish articles. Mungela, you mentioned quite nicely, referring to my methodology that I use both in my master's and my PhD, and especially the article that I published a week ago that's been published by the South African Journal of Higher Education. But that's more, if that's referred to autoethnography, which is actually a methodology that's an insider's perspective of one's experiences, where you reflect inside, but also more importantly, it's quite evocative because you're not only referring to your personal experiences like an autobiography, but you look particularly at and you analyze culture, traditions, how society perceives you, how society perceives your tribe, and how judgment isolationism affects one's identity, and how one's identity can basically contribute towards your mental health and also your level of functioning as well. But referring to what we do on a daily basis, we've got the privilege to attending significant meetings, higher political meetings, such as meetings with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. Especially referring to myself, I've been twice now at the Conference of State Parties, COSP 17, at the United Nations, but also attending Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings as well. But when you look particularly at today, we are gathering to celebrate and highlight the importance of advocacy. It's a vital moment not only for us as autistic adults, but for society as a whole. When autistic people have a space and a platform to speak for themselves, they challenge stereotypes, they broaden their understanding, and they shape the narrative about autism in the way that we can. And when you look at specifically at the next slide, please, Ampungile, when you look particularly at the next pictures, next, yeah, there we go. When you look particularly at the next slide, what we say on social media and what we advocate for on Special Needs Cafe, which is our Facebook page, which you can join, is we are representing a community as well. And what we say is, in some point of view, controversial, but it's for a bigger purpose. And the way we're doing this, we are challenging stigmas as well. We are changing perceptions, and we are fighting for a more inclusive and accessible society in different sectors. For years, we've been silent. For years, we were marginalized. And what we say and what we advocate for is for a bigger purpose and ensuring that we get support from government, because we live in a society where neurodiversity, as you said, Ampungile, is still part of the marginalized groups. We are still underrepresented. There's still, although we live in the 21st century where there's still a lot of awareness, which I will talk about now, there is still a major gap in understanding neurodiversity in the public sector, from a government's perspective, and in different sectors, education, the different sectors in general. And therefore, if we do not push boundaries, when you look at accessibility, inclusion, equality, we will not get anywhere. And that's why we are breaking doors down, to make sure this is happening. Because for years, like I said, I will repeat, we've been silent. And this is our time to be able to ensure that we are transforming our society for the better. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now the question is, why? Why do we advocate? So these platforms has allowed us to represent underrepresented groups, shining a light on the critical gaps in knowledge and support, particularly between the global north and the global south. It is essential to highlight that while the global north often dominates the neurodiverse advocacy landscape, this must not overshadow the stark realities we face in South Africa. And this is a big thing that I actually addressed at United Nations meetings, especially when I attend side sessions that's hosted by the Australian government, New Zealand government, and especially the Canadian government as well. That although there's a great awareness that's going on, it's not relevant according to a global south perspective, especially from a South African perspective, because our social, economic circumstances are different, our political landscape is different, and there's also a major gap in the research from that's published from a neurodiverse perspective, especially when you look particularly at inclusivity, but also a thing that we will address, a topic that we will address will be regarding the mental health and the identity development of autistic adults as well, because that child becomes an adult, and that adult basically will be confronted with challenges as they grow older. But in our nation, referring from a South African perspective, we grapple with an unemployment rate, and this is statistically proven. We grapple with an unemployment rate soaring at 32%. And tragically, the average life expectancy of an autistic adult is just 35 years old, compounded by a distressing suicide rate. It is reality. I read an interesting paper when I did a scoping review, which I will talk about when you look particularly at how many articles was published between the year 2015 and now about the unemployment rate of neurodiverse individuals worldwide. In Britain, just to put it in perspective, in Britain, 15% of all reported suicide attempts each year involve neurodiverse individuals. So we must ask ourselves, how can we bridge the gap of understanding continuous support, sustainable support? Next slide, please. And of course, like I said to you, we are talking about issues, sensitive issues as well, but it needs to be addressed as well, because this is what we are currently experiencing. So the positives, despite these challenges that are referred to, there is positives when you look particularly in the field of autism within South Africa, and I will basically speak about each one individually. We are witnessing a growth, a focus on mental health now more than ever in the year 2024. But also there's been a significant, like I said earlier, when you look particularly at the research published, although there's a gap when you look particularly at the age 15 to 30 and even more, there's a significant amount of research that's been published in early development, in early childhood development. Thank you, Mom. There's universities like the University of Johannesburg that's got the Neurodiverse Center that is not only helping bridging the gap when you look particularly at research, but also more importantly, what they do significantly is that they are focusing on the ground. They're supporting parents in areas that need it, and also they are supporting single parents, and they are basically bridging the gap between research and finding the balance between research and also the practical working on the ground to support families as well. And that is what we need as well. And also, like I said, we've got inspiring rise of individuals that, for instance, we've got autism cell advocates in their diverse fields that are contributing a lot towards autism awareness in their different fields. Even the non-speakers as well. You know, this year, what I want to mention quickly at COSP 17, which I organized together with the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, where I've organized the first side session where autism self-advocates from the continent of Africa shared their stories in the first time in the United Nations history, especially at COSP 17, which is the annual United Nations Disability meeting where heads of governments attend, and also NGOs, non-profit organizations attend. Anyone that's involved with disability attends that meetings to discuss important issues. And of course, this is where the new UNCRPD committee is elected. But for the first time in 17 years, it was the first time in United Nations history where autism self-advocates from the continent of Africa shared their stories to the world, but also more importantly, we had non-speakers that shared their experiences, how they perceived society and how society perceives them, and shared their experiences on different avenues, which was groundbreaking as well. But it shows us, and what I'm saying is true, what it shows us that we are establishing neurodiversity in a light, and this is what we do as well as a team. We're forming vital partnerships with governments to ensure that we fight for the dream of transformation, inclusivity, and equity. Together, we are developing unique African theories that challenges the prevailing narratives as well. You know, just a simple example that I want to give. If you, for instance, Google anything about autism, simple Google it, you will find that majority of your research, 95% of your research is either based in America, Great Britain, Australia, Canada, European countries. America is the top, of course, but you don't find, you will find information regarding to South African perspective, but that's just in the bare minimum as well. So therefore, you know, there's a significant gap that we basically need to address, and the only way we can do it is through advocacy. So next slide, please. Thank you. Am I doing okay? Yeah. Okay, thank you. There we go. Thank you. So autism support paints a very dark picture. Now, I'm going to share with you interesting statistics, and I think this is what makes our partnership and our advocacy together very important, because we bring in statistics, we bring in the personal experiences, we bring the educational experiences together. But I want to share with you something very interesting when you look particularly at the statistics from an African perspective, and especially in West Africa. 15 African countries lack registered psychologists in any formal research or even in practice on autism. You know, in a country like Mozambique, they only have got one registered psychologist, you know, and this is a big problem. In East Africa, 40% of students in some regions come from neighboring countries. Interestingly, when we attended the Commonwealth meeting in Kenya, we had a representative that's currently on the UNCRPD committee representing Africa, and in preparations to meeting the new president and the core cabinet, which the president dissolved the day before, but they mentioned that the education sector is basically so challenged because majority of the students in the education system in schools are either from other countries. For instance, you look at Somalia or Tanzania, and that's a major problem as well. So this highlights the acute need for system support, continuous support. Families in countries like Rwanda and Uganda face unimaginable hardships, with up to 80% exposed to filicide. It's a tragedy that we need to address collectively. The financial burden of autism is staggering, with a lifetime cost of care in the US of up to 3.2 million USD. These figures remind us of the urgency of our mission and the importance of why we advocate and why we take on these issues. And we can't keep quiet anymore. We need to highlight them as well, because that's the only way in which we can get government aware, which we can basically make a difference, and so that we can transform the society for the next slide, please. Thank you very much. As we look globally, statistics are equally alarming. A report from 2020 reveals an 80% unemployment rate for autistic adults worldwide. As we look in Australia, for instance, and in the United States, unemployment for the neurodiverse community ranges from 70 to 80%. The prevailing medical model has often been viewed, which you can go to the next slide, please, that disables individuals solely through a lens of deficiency. Promoting approaches focused on treatment, normalization, and segregation. The mindset must change. It is time we embrace people as they are, valuing their unique contributions in society, seeing themselves as people first and not the diagnosis. Next slide, please. So how do we wish to contribute to autism self-advocacy? And I think this has been based on my journey now the past year and a half now, when it comes to particularly going into this postdoctoral fellowship. And I really believe through research and scholarship, the aim would be to publish articles on autism, especially when you look particularly at universities. And I'm glad that you actually talked about when you introduced me about my PhD thesis, and especially now looking at the article that was published last week. When you look particularly at the first 3 days of my experiences at university, it really challenges those aspects that's been previously cited. When you look particularly at what is regarded masculine, ableist, and also how these traditions, these cultures influence my identity as autistic individual, someone that the system regards as different. And I think generally we can talk about all disabled people as well in these situations. So, so when you think about what we do as autism advocates, and I think that's where the nice balance comes in, is that, you know, we attend academic conferences, but we basically talk at higher political meetings. So we've got the nice balances. But at these conferences, what we do as well is that we create awareness. We share our personal experiences to inspire, to give hope, but also more importantly, to make those gatekeepers aware of what we're currently experiencing in the field, how we perceive it, and what can be done as well. You know, there was someone that actually said a couple of years ago that when you talk to autistic people or families, you walk on hollow ground, meaning that the insight that they share, their personal experiences, is valuable, is accurate, and we can learn from them as well, because you are seeing through their eyes how they're experiencing things. And that's the only way in which we can do it, is if we keep pushing boundaries, keep uh, advocating. So through my journey into autism self-advocacy is intrinsically linked to rigorous research, and also based on our personal experiences together, we can change the narrative as well. And what's quite nice from a research perspective, I'm mentoring now 2 masters and 1 PhD student, which is quite nice. And this is what I also see in the field of education, is that those who wants to work in the field of education, majority of the young teachers, they of course they want to continue with their studies, but he's currently doing teaching. They've got some form of personal experiences in the field of autism. I have got a sibling that's on the spectrum, or they basically will, or they work in the field of education, but something changed their perception, which encouraged them to be in this field as well. And this is more encouraging when you look particularly at that. But like I said, there's still a long way to go to change the narrative. So the next slide will talk about what are the challenges that we're currently experiencing. We must also confront these challenges head on. And this is what we are doing. Workplace discrimination, segregation in education settings, social communication barriers, and a lack of reasonable accommodations.
Yeah.
Now, I think that when you talk about this word of reasonable accommodation, right? Reasonable accommodation is a big word, and it's a word that's often confused. It's a word that's often being misinterpreted, and due to a lack of understanding and knowledge. When we talk about reasonable accommodation, when you talk about the field of autism, when you look at particularly at autism, etc., you talk about how we perceive society as well, and we talk about the neurological difference, right? The neurodevelopmental difference, but it's attitudes, it's society's perceptions, and it's a lack of knowledge that disables us. And therefore, it's imperative that we prioritize skills development, education, like these platforms, where everyone can feel valued, empowered, and of course, educated. Okay, next slide, please. Now, when you talk about this word, something to do, something to do is like a philosophy that we follow in our household as a family. Now, we always say that there's actually 3 things, that we do, which is paramount to one's mental health, and also, when you look at how we cope in different situations. But I think this is 3 fundamental things in every person's life. We always say that, when someone has got something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to, that is where true happiness lies. And that is how I basically looked at this philosophy. And this is paramount to what each neurodiverse individual needs to be able to cope and have a healthy, fulfilled life. And this thing about something to do is basically, I would say this is the whole theme when it comes to my presentations and this big problem that we're currently experiencing when you look particularly at the field of neurodiversity, especially in our country, and look at unemployment. Because if someone doesn't have something to do, and also something to look forward to, it will affect their mental health, and this automatically contribute towards the suicide statistic. It's real, it exists, it happens. So furthermore, we need to understand the profound importance of purpose. Statistically wise, according to the 2017 South African census, 88% of adults, of autistic adults, earn below the minimum wage. And the minimum wage is like 3,500 Rand. Or is it 3,600? But anyway, it's somewhere between that line. But think about it in society today. How is this possible? And let me tell you something. We've been in situations before where, especially when you look particularly at, Sammy, for instance, my wife, if I can say that.
She is your wife.
No, but that's what I'm going to say now. When you look at particularly at where people didn't have a choice not to pay her, to pay for the minimum wage. It's quite controversial, but that's important because it was based on choice. And they chose not to pay Sammy the minimum wage based on the fact that they didn't believe that she couldn't read and write, basically. I'm good. I can say it. Yes. And that's why we are talking about this, because this lack of knowledge and this lack of knowledge and the lack of education and humanity basically disables the individual, and that contributes towards the health issues as well. So I wanted to share with you something personal as well. And I was thinking about, when I prepared this, if I can say it, but I just believe that, but this is why we advocate, because we need to address this sort of thing. So yeah, it's important for us to address these issues as well. So thank you for that, Ma. So together we shape the narrative around autism, where where individuals can be seen for their strengths and contributions. That was a big statement. But okay. But that's the truth. Now, next slide, please. We are tackling a lot of issues, but it's important. Now, when you particularly look at a research perspective, and you referred to my PhD. As a PhD student, actually now as a postdoctoral fellow, because I'm no longer a student because I graduated, I strive to provide an insights perspective, sharing how autistic individuals experience university life. Through autoethnography, I conveyed my stories and experiences, highlighting society's often lack of understanding and acceptance. And I think when you look particularly at where I'm currently at now as a postdoctoral fellow, next slide, please. As a postdoctoral fellow, looking ahead to my postdoctoral work, I am poised to extend self-advocacy, representing the broader neurodiverse community within universities and higher education institutions. And therefore, there's a lot of theme that I focused on. So for instance, what I'm currently busy with at UNISA is we've got a research program, which I'm running currently, which will center on supporting neurodiverse staff and students within universities. And the reason why this is a vocal point in research, and of course it's one of the niche areas, is because students tend to feel that they feel ashamed of disclosing diagnosis due to fear of discrimination and victimization. And this often links to isolation, and also isolationism, and also the this links to isolationism and segregation, and of course the lack of reasonable accommodations. And therefore, we need to address these issues as well. And therefore, it's important, and I'm glad that the University of Johannesburg has got a neurodiverse center. When you look particularly at what they do on the ground, which I mentioned before, is that students must feel comfortable to know that they've got support on various avenues as well. And therefore, alongside with mentorship that I will receive, especially with my current mentor that I have, of course, we will contribute a lot towards the publishment called African Perspectives of Autism Volume 2, which further amplifies the value of research as well, and the importance of bridging the gap between advocacy, doing what work on the ground, but also more importantly, what we do from a research perspective as well. Now, I see that there was a comment with regards to neurodiversity. Apology if I didn't interpret it correctly, but I saw something with regards to ADHD, ADD. I didn't read it because I was too focused on my presentation, but I know that the next presentation will focus particularly at neurodiversity as well. So your answers or your questions will be answered then. But yet again, this is additionally, this was my lot. And of course, what I'm aimed to do, if you go to the next slide, please, is that I will co-supervise, of course, further postgraduate students globally, and also various autism-focused topics, ensuring that the next generation of researchers is equipped with the tools to advocate for change. Our commitment to international disability rights our commitment to international disability rights activism remains steadfast and continuous. And therefore, what I wanted to say is that our education platform is the Special Needs Cafe as well. That is where our carer, my mother-in-law, will share our experiences, myself and Sammy's, as autistic couple, but also more importantly, how we advocate for a more inclusive and accessible society. And of course, my email address is there, my LinkedIn page is there as well, but also more importantly, our activism, our advocacy is on Facebook on the Special Needs Cafe. So I really want to thank you for allowing me to speak. It's me really an honor. And thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emile. Thank you so much. That was lovely. I think you covered some really essential points there that I don't think people understood. Number one, about autism, particularly when we look at the space of the reality, right? Often, particularly in the workplace, when people look at various impairments, we only look at it in terms of, you know, the workspace. That's it. But I really liked how you highlighted the you know, the extent of its reach, the work that is being done internationally, and really talking to the realities and the position where we are now. And I also love the fact that you touched on various elements that are attached to autism, where it's not just really about, you know, the burdensomeness, but the policy, the reality and its implications in the world, you know, the elements around the cost, looking at the developmental areas within, you know, individuals, but also looking at how it affects individuals as a community. And I don't think often people understand that these are not just issues of mental health and that's it. But I also loved one of the questions that was posed here. Um, um, sorry, I can't remember the name, but the question was along the lines of, how do we get people to understand that and this is generally about mental health conditions, but I think it you know, you'd be well suited to answer it. How do we get people to understand that mental health conditions are just as real as physical impairments, and that if we have an invisible impairment, we're not just lazy? Because often this is quite, you know, the assumption that, this is an excuse. Oh, they're just using it as a crutch. Oh, but this is not true. So how do we get people to understand, particularly in the workplace, where there are these, you know, systematic barriers that are stigmatized and going, this is how you work, this is how it, you know, this is what we expect. You don't do it this way, you're lazy. You have another reason, we don't understand, you're lazy. So can you just give us some insights into that?
You know, on Bugele, it's a very important issue when you look particularly at mental health wise as well, because I often see that people are not aware of what they do not see. And therefore, for instance, when you look particularly at mental health issues, mental health is a very important aspect towards neurodiversity, as which cannot be underestimated. And I think this is where this whole gap comes in when you look particularly at this. Excuse me, I just need to switch off my phone here because it's
No
been
worries.
bothering me quite a apologies
Should
for
have
that.
put it on silent.
Okay. Yes, I must actually do it. But anyway, when you look particularly at, you know, this is the gap that we're currently experiencing in the field, and this relates to research, a lack of knowledge in the workplace, a lack of reasonable accommodations and support as well. And this is where education knowledge comes in. What do we do when we have an autistic employee? What do we do in order to accommodate that individual, to ensure that they are accommodated as well? And I think the next presentation is going to focus tremendously on that as well. And of course, you know, the small things in adjustments. For instance, the small adjustments that we make when you look particularly at, you know, for instance, if there's enough water, or if there's enough air in the room, or if there's a if there's a personal assistant to accommodate and reasonably accommodate and assist. That is small things, that adjustment that's make, or additional time. That is small things that we do to make that person's life a little bit better as well. And that small things are due to a lack of education and a lack of understanding that people do not know. And the fundamental thing is that And I think this is where the 21st century of education comes in and awareness comes in, because we live in a time now where there's a lot more self-advocates that's talking. There's a lot more published research that's been published. There's a lot more awareness just generally out there of autistic adults that are diagnosed after the age of 40 or 35 or
60.
or 60 even, because you know there's so much great awareness in understanding yourself and the value of finding your place, finding your tribe, and understanding your identity. That is the fundamental thing, and that contributes a lot towards how you perceive yourself, finding your place, and also making sure that you've got the necessary support to be able to function. And that is for me the fundamental thing about mental health as well. And unfortunately, there's due to a lack of understanding, due to a lack of knowledge and a lack of education. That is why we've got a lot
And that's what I'm going to do, educate.
and that is why there's a high suicide rate as well. So of course, there's a hell of a lot of emphasis on on early childhood education as well. And of course, organizations like UNESCO, companies like UNESCO, or organizations like UNESCO, focusing a lot on public research from early childhood development. It's important as well. But like I said to you when I posed my question in my presentation earlier, what happens when a child becomes an adult? Right, because then when you look particularly at when a child hits puberty, when you look particularly at when a child grows older, and all of those fundamental things, if that child, and we can take my wife Sammy for as an example, where schools segregated her and isolated her because of, and they didn't take her because of a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding and a lack of reasonable accommodation. That contributes towards mental health challenges. That contributes to the fact that they do not have a purpose, and therefore, it's fundamental issues that we need to address, and that is what we will try to do as well. So mental health is definitely a big challenge, but through advocacy, through education, through platforms like this, what we have on the Special Needs Cafe, that is what we will do to change the paradigm.
Yeah. And I want to take it back to the elements of education and what happens when the person is, when that individual is older. I know when you were talking about the first 3 days of your entry into university, you found that there were certain barriers within the institution. And I'm quite sure that there is an intersectionality there and quite a copy and paste scenario of the same difficulties that one would have faced if they were in the workplace. So can you just tell people basically what difficulties you faced in those first 3 days in a higher institute education? Because I also think then we can move it into what were, those will be similar challenges that youth going into the workplace will face, and therefore then how would the university redeem it, and therefore how should the workplace redeem that? Can you just talk a little bit more about that as well?
Okay. Yeah. You see, when you talk about my first 3 days as autistic student in a unfamiliar environment, a environment that was influenced by a lot of traditions, a lot of masculine ableist expectations of students. Exactly. And of course, this PhD, and especially this article addresses the fundamental attitudes of segregation, isolationism, masculinity, ableism, whiteness, and particularly at, the big cultural aspects, and I think this article challenges sensitive, topics surrounding this, because, but it needs to be addressed as well. So as someone that was a white Afrikaans male, on the autism spectrum, I felt immediately segregated
Mm.
because my own, because I wasn't a sportsman. I was heavily obese. I weighed 130 kilograms. Technically 135. Or was it 137? I'm not sure, but 100. Just. But yes, yes, and my body language was totally rigid.
Couldn't look people in the eye.
Yeah, and basically, yes, I didn't make eye contact. And keep in mind that, I wrote matric a couple of months before, got university exemption, and immediately, as soon as I went to the new environment, new expectations, new people, my body language was totally rigid. And I didn't like change, and that contributed a lot towards my mental health challenges as well. And of course, as someone who likes sport, I
You didn't
wanted
back
to.
then.
I didn't participate. He likes he's like a savant. He's
Ah,
like a
okay.
rugby savant.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yes. So I wanted to participate in coaching, maybe, because that was my interest field. Understanding how does the body work, and how does the muscles work. And when I introduced myself yet again to the lecturer, who was the head of the department at the time, or head of the subject, I actually disclosed my diagnosis to say I'm on the autism spectrum. How will you accommodate me? And immediately the lecturer said that they recommend that I do not enroll for that course because I will fall behind, and they will not make the necessary reasonable accommodations to support me as an autistic individual, just because I disclosed my diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it felt that my whole world came down because suddenly I'm in a crossroads, do not know what to do, and basically
Can't find yourself around the building.
I can't find myself as well because no signs, nothing as autistic adult, and you will know that sensory overload is a big thing.
Huge.
Noise levels extremely high. Couldn't find any environment suitable to accommodate my needs. Eventually, they recommended the the head of department when I went to said that I need to go to the psychologist, the university psychologist, to help me navigate my journey ahead. And eventually, keep in mind that my self-confidence was low. Of course, I had mental health challenges. And when I went to the university psychologist, we basically talked about what's the next step. And the next step basically was to move my whole focus, focus more on psychology as well as of course history as well, but also psychology and focusing on autism particularly, because for me it was actually an interesting subject because I wanted to understand how I coped in society, why I was perceived differently, why did I struggle to speak, why people viewed me as different. Besides being 135 kilograms, why was I why was I viewed differently?
Mm.
Why did students talk to me? And for instance, those first 3 days in those different environments, I was involved in a situation where a student would want to take a picture of me, and I asked him, why would you take a picture? They said, because I want to show my fellow stars, my fellow residents, people, how I don't know if I can say it, a retard.
Say it.
How a retard looks like, right? I know this word is banned, but you know,
But that's what they said back then. So
that's what I said. Yes, and we're quite honest here. But
yeah.
yes, so that is one of the fundamental things, you know, that contributes to my mental health. And I didn't find my place as well. And of course, the worst thing for me was that my Afrikaans students, the traditional Afrikaans residents, which I was enrolled at, because I couldn't drive as well. And of course, my parents couldn't drive me up and down because I lived far. And um, my cousin was hesitant to pick me up.
He was embarrassed.
Was embarrassed as well because of my diagnosis. Um, there was, for instance, and I think my article addresses is it as well, where I would basically walk past my cousin and greeted her and say, hello, how are you? Because, and she ignored me and she said in front of her friends, I don't know you. Who are you? You know, and that affected my mental health as well. And therefore, and I think till today as well, you know, these experiences, even as a child, you know, when I was in grade 2, when the teacher tied my hands up because I stumped in class and because I couldn't express my emotions verbally, you know, that caused trauma. And therefore, you know, I've got, and I think that contributes a lot towards where I don't take isolationism and segregation very well, you know, because, you know, based on my past experiences. But I think that's what a lot of autistic adults also experience as well in different environments. And I think that is where, that's why we tend to refer to autistic adults, advocates, sometimes as keyboard warriors as well, because, you know, that is how society treated us, you know, and that is why we are addressing all of these issues. So, yeah, so coming back to my university experience, the hey?
If I can
My,
just
yes,
jump in there, Emile, you know what I'm also hearing? I'm hearing you make the link between um, a certain diagnosis and the way in which we are treated in a new environment, particularly in an institutionalized environment, and the mental health implications. So often you'll know we've got this big thing now, you know, learnerships are now quite a thing in South Africa, and I'm sure all three of us have our own views on learnerships, and we're quite passionate about them in one way or another. But it's also about you know, the fact that you will have a certain individual who is youth, who has an impairment, who goes into the work environment, and just already the stereotypes, just walking into that environment with that specific sort of culture, with those certain sort of feedback and the bias and the stereotype that they're already getting, you know, that kind of feedback, um, that that already causes emotional turmoil. That already causes um, a huge internal difficulty, and you know, and it's a trigger and a negative impact on mental health, because I think often people think you're either diagnosed with mental health and you have everything else, but you've got to have a diagnosis for mental health for you to be affected by mental health conditions. But there was also a study that showed that an individual would come into the workspace and say they declared that they had a mobility impairment. And at the end of the year, when they did the same study, the individual was then asked, what were the most challenges that you faced? What was the real impairment? And they actually cited mental health conditions. And that really speaks to the fact that, you know, people don't understand that the barriers in the workplace and in society really do subtly create a mental health. I suppose it breaks it down, right? It really breaks it down. So with that, I'm just watching the time. We promised everybody a 5-minute break. So if we
yeah,
can be back at 10:30, and then we will begin with Kim's session.
Yeah,
Um,
Abogile, can I quickly say two
yes,
things, a minute or
yes,
so?
yes,
I
please.
want to say thank you for that, but keep in mind, I think this is where wanted to say that, this is where the invisible impairment comes in, because what people do not see, they do not understand as well.
Mm.
Because I looked like an able-bodied man, but at university, but they didn't accept me unconditionally as well. But keep in mind as well that, I found acceptance not by the Afrikaans population. I found acceptance by the African community as well. The spirit of Ubuntu basically came through as well, accepting me unconditionally. My roommate was a school friend that I had, who was an African male, and that acceptance that I got, basically from them, was basically tremendous as well. And that also brings out, the fact that this thing about the importance of research from an African perspective as well. How we view cultures, how we view traditions, the spirit of togetherness, so that is for me a very profound aspect that I wanted to include there. And of course, you can read it in the article.
Hi, Nonto.
Hi, Abs. I was just looking at the time.
Yes, yes, we
Thank you.
had, yeah.
Thank you.
So yes, thanks, Emile. And I think that's very important, because we tend to, see things as black and white. Actually, quite, yeah. But yes, like I promised, a 5-minute break. So we will be back at 10:33.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so hope everybody had their break. I hope everybody is back. We are going to start with the second part. Let's just check if Kim is online. Kim, are you online?
Hi, Abby.
Hi, lovely. Okay, your camera is really fuzzy, and we are going to have a that glitch thing
Put
again.
your sound, sorry, ma. Put your...
It's on.
Thank you for coming back, everyone. So I just wanted to, I'm sure you heard me in the beginning when I introduced Kim Hicks. Amongst many things, she is Emile and Sammy's carer. She'll explain what that is. And so that is why Emile kept referring to our partnership, our advocacy. It's quite a close relationship. And so she'll explain that, but she'll also touch on the 3 essential points. A lot of you were asking around, what are some of the mental health conditions and, recommendations around that and understanding them. So she'll focus on 4 types of neurodivergence conditions. They also, relate to mental health. And so Kim will help us understand that. She'll help us unpack that. She'll help us understand, what they are defined as and, the bare bones of how they are characterized. And I think it will be quite an open dialogue around her experiences, but also really sharing and taking us through very interesting elements as well of organizations that do hire neurodivergent employees. And she gives guidance in terms of how the workplaces can support individuals with neurodivergence. She will start off by also talking about her complex PTSD, which I also have. And she'll also then compare and juxtapose that to acquired neurodivergent conditions and non-acquired conditions. So Kim, please take it away. Your camera is fuzzy. So if you could just greet so people can see your face, and if you don't mind switching off, and I think we'll be good to go. Thanks, Nasia.
Is it okay now?
Your camera's still fuzzy, but your audio is good.
Okay, let me turn my camera off.
No, your camera's fine.
She said it's fuzzy.
It's very fuzzy. We can't see you at all. So
Okay,
I think it's better if you just turn it off. Yeah.
That's better for me. I don't want to see my face. Okay. So hi, everybody. My name is Kim Hicks. I'm a white female, 60 years old. I have a floral white dress on. I have blonde hair, and I'm ready to explain neurodiversity to you today. I live with Sammy, my daughter, who is 28 years old, and she is she has alexia, which means that she cannot read or write. It's a form of dyslexia. And she also has language processing issues, which makes her language, she has language difficulties. I live with my 89-year-old mother who's deaf. So, and I got married in March to a neurodiverse 66-year-old. And we live with our 5 dogs, and 3 of them are deaf and blind. So this is an incredibly neurodiverse household, as well as having other disabilities. My mom's also has limited movement. So I have over the years watched how activists like Emile have, with invisible disabilities, have fought to change their narrative from the medical model of the need to cure disabilities to the social model of acceptance and inclusion. The neurodiversity movement embraces these neurological differences as natural variations. It was in the 1990s that Judy Singer, a sociologist who coined the term neurodiversity. It challenges the notions of neurological disorders or deficits, instead promoting acceptance, inclusion, and support for people with diverse brain functions. And in terms of the neurodiverse movement, these conditions are coined as the autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Tourette syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorders, and sensory processing disorders. And all of these fall under the neurodiverse umbrella. Because neurodiversity is such a wide and complex set of individual conditions, it's virtually impossible for me to cover them all. So today I will talk to you about 3 conditions that I have specialist training on as a teacher and as a mother who has raised 3 children with different conditions. I will also talk to you about another neurodiverse condition that I acquired. I will explain these conditions, what their strengths are, and how employees can support them in a work environment. So I find the neurodiverse world a place of wonder and comfort, as it is in my world, a place of constant support and caring. And it is so because I choose to embrace it, and I find the wonder in it. And if I can get people to just step into that world, it's incredibly joyful, and you see the world in a beautiful, beautiful light. So I'm going to talk to you about my condition, which is an acquired neurodiverse condition, and it's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And after that, I will discuss ADHD, dyslexia, and autism, because they are the most prevalent invisible conditions in our world right now, and it happens to be what I'm speaking about. It also, by the way, happens to be International Disability Month, people, so this is very pertinent that we're talking about this today. So I just want a sip of water. CPTSD is the one condition that I acquired over the years from prolonged and repeated exposure to traumatic events involving sexual abuse, 2 hijackings, 32 years of an abusive marriage, mercury and arsenic poisoning, and financial abuse. I should also add that raising 3 children with disabilities in South Africa without the emotional support from both the government and my ex-husband led me to this very dark space. And it was 5 years ago, nearly 6, that I was diagnosed. So it's taken me years to manage my mental health, but with the knowledge that there is neuroplasticity within the brain, that I have managed to create new neural pathways to overcome the anxiety. And interesting that 3.35% of our population, over 2 million people is said to suffer from PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a single traumatic event that happens to them. There are no stats on CPTSD, but gender-based violence is so prevalent in our country, and the majority is unreported and undiagnosed, so we would never know those statistics anyway. So how does CPTSD present? It presents as emotional dysregulation, being unable to regulate your emotions. 1 minute you're okay, 1 minute you're not okay, then a trigger happens, and then you're back into your little box. There are mood swings, and there is emotional numbing, which can make a person feel nothing. Not happy, not sad, nothing. You also suffer from hypervigilance. So you wake up in the morning and you feel this feeling of doom, and you are watching everything. Something's going to happen. A noise will trigger you. Dogs barking will trigger you. And you're hypervigilant. You're watching all this time. When you're driving, when you're walking the streets, when you're walking in shopping centers, you're watching for something that's going to happen.
Hello.
Something bad's going to happen. What we do is we avoid spaces. And literally, if you need to go to the shops, you need to work yourself up and tell yourself it's okay and everything's going to be okay. And it takes hours, maybe days, to get yourself into that space where you go, okay, I'm going to the shops now. And avoiding people, because groups and crowds, there's a lot of noise. You don't know what's coming at you. It's a very difficult thing to be, is in places with lots of people. We also have distorted or fragmented memories. In fact, I don't have any memories of my childhood whatsoever. And I have some memories that come up in my marriage and stuff, but we have fragmented memories. We also have feelings of shame and guilt and worthlessness and self-blame, especially with sexual abuse. A lot of people have preoccupation with the trauma because the trauma sit with you. They're very hard to put behind you in the past. They sit with you, next to you, in you. And when you bring up, when you ask a person about their trauma, they actually relive the trauma. All those feelings of anxiety, high adrenaline, cortisol, all flow into their bodies, and they actually feel the trauma again. And what trauma does, it also sits in the body, and they feel pain and illness. So a lot of people with CPTSD have illnesses. It's not a very pleasant condition, I must tell you, but we can be supported by understanding that anxiety is our biggest barrier, and by establishing a safe, supportive environment where people are educated as to what you're going through, and people are kind and aware of your condition. And this is why I say it's important for us to feel safe in order to share our diagnosis, because people can't help if you do not tell them. And by educating people, they will be aware and they will have empathy, hopefully, but education is paramount here. To have flexible hours and remote options is probably paramount, because to expect a person with CPTSD to come into the office every day, especially like in the teaching environment, it's virtually impossible, but in workspaces, to allow for a remote option. And to break down tasks into smaller chunks, that the person doesn't feel so overwhelmed by a huge amount of work coming at them. If they have to come into the office, make sure that there are quiet workspaces, and to minimize the triggers in the workspace. So if you know a builder's coming in to bash down a wall, please tell your person with CPTSD to stay home. If there's going to be a loud party and they're going to have fireworks and all that kind of stuff, please understand if they say no. And also to designate calm areas for employees and educate them on CPTSDs. And as I said, to refrain from asking them about the trauma, and to establish clear policies and procedures, because to have clear outlines of how that person is supported and what they expect is very important for them. As I go through that, is there anything that anybody would like to ask me? Because as I move on to the next thing, because I'm going to be talking a lot about ADHD and autism and that kind of stuff. So is there anybody who wants to contribute or ask me anything about CPTSD?
I see Tracy, Allison, really said, what you said really resonates with her. And I see somebody's hand up. Please go ahead.
Hello, Kim. My name is Sue. I work in an environment where it's a huge institution and there's a lot of diversity and movement. And we currently do have a situation where We have an employee with CPTSD as just one of the complex multiple disability diagnoses. My question is, if it's an employee who has been in a role that is not conducive to, as you mentioned, designating them to a calmer space or working area, let's say they're in a frontline kind of a role, and the disability disclosure only came about a few years into their tenure of employment, that they have CPTSD, how do we then, accommodate? I mean, there already are some accommodations. There has been some flexibility, but the role doesn't lend itself to flexible working hours or remote working because it's a frontline facing role. So any suggestions or thoughts or ideas on that?
Yeah, so if it's not possible for her to have a remote role, you need to make sure she has her own office, where it's quiet, where she can focus, where it doesn't lend to loud noises, that she can just regulate herself. If that's not possible, it's best you have a space, a quiet space, low lighting, a comfortable seating, also a quiet space for her. That will help, so she can go to regulate herself. Does that help?
Not really if it's an administrative sort of reception type of role, where you have to be in the front line of people coming in and out the space all the time.
Kim, do you mind if I jump in quick?
Yeah.
Particularly for that role, you have to understand that things are not black and white with individuals. So if she has acquired complex PTSD years into the role, it means she has some coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And it means that she is able to support herself to a certain extent. And she's been doing that job. Now, Kim and I don't hide away from people. We go to the shops and we shop and we do what we have to do. So we have coping mechanisms. What I think would be helpful in that place is, sure, perhaps she may need 30-minute, a 30-minute break than other people. So you want to schedule maybe another 30-minute break. And you let people know that this is a new thing, that she'll be available at this time, and she maybe has 3 breaks instead of 2. And so that's the one thing. And then another thing is her reasonable accommodation in this sense would be to receive therapeutic psychotherapy, and in the psychotherapy she will undergo techniques like DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, which helps with coping mechanisms, managing, self-regulation, all of those. So in her sense, that's what reasonable accommodation would be in order to capacitate her to perform at her best. So it wouldn't need her to be reallocated or moved in any other way. So that's where I would say there. But also what may really help is to start asking her what has worked for her in this space and how would she want to be supported.
Yeah, can I say something there? I think the most important thing, and that's why we advocate for this, is that only the person with the condition can tell you what their requirements are, because each person is so different and it presents so differently. So, what I've spoken about, in how does it present? It can present as one thing, not perhaps all of these things. So only the individual can tell you what they need. And I'm in the that's why it's such a complex thing. It's not like a person who is physically disabled in a wheelchair. You know how to work out the doorways and the lifts and table heights and all that kind of stuff. It's basically, it's not a one thing fits all. you know, you have to speak to that individual. How can I accommodate you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is a question here. How often is complex PTSD combined with other disorders such as ADHD? And I think you're going into that, aren't you?
I am. So,
Sure.
you know, CPTSD will occur, especially in autism, where you're getting one trauma and then another trauma and another trauma and another trauma. So a lot of autistics have CPTSD, although they're not specifically diagnosed with CPTSD until much later in their lives. But okay, let me just move on and then I'll explain the whole thing to you. Okay, ADHD's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a neurological disorder characterized by symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. They have difficulty paying attention, following instructions, and completing tasks. And you will know these. Is someone, okay, can someone mute their mic? Okay, so these people, you will know these people. They are high energy people. They flit all over the place. They're like little butterflies, you know, making noise. And they they fidget excessively. They're restless and impulsive, and they blurt things out, and they talk excessively, and they interrupt others, and they can't wait their turn, and they intrude on people's conversations. So this is, I'm explaining the energy of this person. Okay, they are high energy, and they often have high anxiety with it. So I'm sure you know a couple of these people in your life. They walk into the room and they just light up like a spotlight, and they are busy. But in saying that, you might think, oh my gosh, these people are a lot. They are a lot, but they have got huge amounts of strengths. They think outside the box and have innovative ideas. They bring high levels of passion and motivation to their projects. And remember, a lot of these people in the workplace have their own coping skills. They've worked through school, they've perhaps worked through university, they're on meds, perhaps not, but they have their own personal strategies. They have, and because they've got through school and university, they are adjustable and flexible. They are resilient and have perseverance to overcome challenges. They are multitaskers of note and problem solvers. They think on their feet and respond so quickly. They have a natural inclination towards entrepreneurship. They have emotional intelligence, which is so important in the workspace. They're intuitive. They're authentic people. They're real. Okay, there's no frills. And they have a huge amount of humor, and they're very curious people. They are incredible. And I know ADHD really well because I have ADHD. I was out of the classroom more than I was in the classroom. I was undiagnosed because my parents were so focused on my brother who had dyslexia. And I was sent to a girls' private school in Waverley, and honestly, I spent most of my time outside. The teacher was telling me to go and run around. I would watch the teachers pick their pimples instead of listening to what the teacher was saying. You know, I was one of those, but curious, very curious. Okay, and I am impulsive, and I am resilient. I'm so resilient. I will persevere. I will get this done. I will make the change. I will never shut up. Okay. And I have been shouted at and pushed down, and you know, people want me to shush. but I will not shush. I'm done shushing. So yeah, ADHD is real for me, and I fidget all the time, whether I'm picking my nails or moving my feet, or right now I'm hugging Bella, Emile's and Sammy's support dog, because moving makes me feel better. It regulates me. So yeah, we move a lot. So how do you support ADHD in the workplace? Also, by flexible working hours, because what we do is we hyper focus so much, and we work our guts out in a day, and the next day we are finished. So give us an hour in the morning, maybe we're late for work, because maybe we didn't sleep because we were thinking about 5 things at once, going to sleep, and then we work them all out, and then we go to sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, or we have to take a sleeping pill. So you need to be aware that ADHD's brains never shut down, okay? And we need a quiet space to work, because picture this. So you're in a open plan work environment, and so over there's got a bright red shirt, okay, and the person in front of her has got one Musa big pimple on her forehead, and it's pulsating, and you can see that thing. There is another person over there who's talking to a really hot man, and you're going, what's going on there? And then a dog barks, and you hear the dog bark, and the smells coming from the kitchen, and you want to, oh my God, this smells delicious, and your bum's hurting. Oh my gosh, I need a comfortable chair. So you're going to get up and you're going to find a comfortable, and it never ends. Your focus never ends. So you need a quiet workspace where you can actually focus on what you need to do. Okay. Also, because we hyper focus and we work so hard, now and again you need to tell that person, hey, can I bring you a cup of coffee? Can you take a break? Maybe don't you need a wee? You know, that kind of situation. And because they're so real, you can say that to them. You know, visual aids also help because you want to capture that person's attention. And I remember when I was on teaching prac, my friend Margie, I was doing remedial education, and we were on teaching prac. I think we were at Bryanston Primary School, and I walked. I don't know why, but they always gave me this little support class where they put all these kids together with all these different conditions, and stuck me in a prefab building at the bottom of the school. And I don't know, one of the little boys has hit another on the head with his plaster cast, and there was chaos in the classroom. I didn't have a teaching assistant, so I ran to Margie's classroom, and there she was standing on the desk, and she was clucking like a duck. And Margie taught me so much in that moment. You have to keep their attention, and by keeping that person's attention, using visual aids helps, because it captures their attention. What also helps is assistive technology, speech to text, text to speech, and it's great because we've got WhatsApp and we can do that. A lot of countries don't use WhatsApp. You know, it seems to be South Africa loves WhatsApp, and that really helps. But the ergonomic workspace is so important for the ADHDers. Comfortable seating, dim lighting, regulated temperatures, because we feel heat and cold to the extremes.
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
When I get hot, I go blood red in the face and I want to pass out. And cold, I freeze to death. So regulating temperatures is also a thing for ADHDers. So, and educating the staff. I mean, I feel nothing telling people what my issues are, because sorry, my blind dog's just jumped on my computer. If we don't educate the people around us as to what our needs are and who we are not our ADHD. Our ADHD is us. Okay, that's our personality. That's how we function. And so if people don't recognize that in us, they can't help us, because we don't need the help, but we need the environment to be a place of safety and comfort and where we can shine, because boy, we can shine. The interesting thing about ADHDers, I call them, are so my daughter, my oldest daughter, Christy, she's 33 now. She has ADHD and dyslexia, and school was interesting. I got to stop saying She wanted to become a doctor, and it was evident for me throughout school that this wasn't going to be, her dream wasn't going to be fulfilled, because with dyslexia and ADHD, science and maths was a real problem. So she went to Vega, and that was great for her because it was a small university and she had one-on-one help and she had a mentor, and she studied visual communications. She was incredible. She did her honors in dyslexia as a brand, and she got 100%. Because they, you know, the out of the box thinkers. But what I'm trying to say is, that wasn't her love. She loved medicine and the way the body works and all that kind of stuff. So she decided she was going to study Pilates, and she works with surgeons and physiotherapists in the ongoing healing of the body. Not only that, she became a trainer to the trainers. She does all the marketing and training manuals for Basi Pilates Africa. And she does all their social media. She's a multitasker of note. They don't do just one thing. They do so many different things, so many roles. Yeah, so that's ADHD. So is there any questions on ADHD? I can go into it in depth, but let's just keep this a little bit surface.
No questions on the chat. Please feel free to raise your hand. Okay, no hands. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay. So,
Oh, wait, hold on. I see a hand.
Okay.
Please go ahead. Jason.
Okay.
Was it
Oh,
Jason?
Jason.
Jaron. Hi, it's Jaron.
Oh, sorry, Jaron.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, from what you described a lot, it sounded more like it sounded more that it was mostly on the hyperactive side. Are those symptoms also applicable to inattention, or does inattention manifest differently? Because I know there's a split between the two.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
As far as I understand it, there's two different splits within ADHD, one being inattention and one being the hyperactive side. But it sounded like, it seemed like most of what you described is related to the hyperactive side. Is there perhaps more that you could share on the inattention side?
Okay, so as I said, with the inattention side, is that you need to capture their attention, whether it's hyper or hypo. And, you know, for me to go into the support is for both. Okay? Does that help?
Yes, sure. That makes sense.
The numbers that he showed me in what I shared.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I said yes. It makes sense that the support mechanisms are similar.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Okay, pleasure. Can I continue?
Can I ask a question? Or can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my son is severe ADHD. He's had it for 30 years.
Yeah.
It started manifesting when he was 2.
Yeah.
He has inattention. He can go running after a butterfly, but God forbid crowds and loud noises, he's going to collapse.
Yeah.
Unexpected, not routine stuff, he is going to react. Flashing lights, he's going to react. We know this. When you treat an ADHD, it doesn't matter if they're the hyperactive or if they're the inattention, because when you're in attention, you're not concentrating, you do not hear, you do not understand, you do not pick it up. And when you're hyper, you also do not hear, do not realize, do not pick it up. And therefore, if you're treating the whole ADHD person, you have to be cognizant of this. And you have to be cognizant with my son, it's routine, routine, routine. If you break routine, he's at an absolute loss. So, and Kim, to your point about trauma in marriage, yes, I do understand. I've been there myself. I am divorced. I'm on my second husband too, who's been very supportive, but it is hard. And yes, I still do things related to trauma. And I know I do. And there's nothing I can do about it except recognize it and work on changing where it doesn't help me. Thank you for your time.
Oh, bless you. I can tell you what changed my life. I know this is going off course a bit. We're going back to the CPTSD, but I'm with the most phenomenal psychiatrist, and he's an alternative psychiatrist. I did the ketamine therapy, which helped a lot to dispel the anxiety and the depression. But the one thing that helped me more than anything was my psychiatrist told me I needed to read a book by Joe Dispenza called Becoming Supernatural. And it was a 3-week study, and it literally has changed the neural pathways in my brain. And so my suggestion.
Can you put?
I'm sorry, my blind dog is howling for me. Hold on 1 minute.
Can you put that book in the chat, please, Abs, so that we can all see it?
Yeah, I will do so.
I'd really like to read it.
And there's another book called Shadow Work. And also I'll put that up. It's brilliant.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's move on to dyslexia now, if I can.
Yeah.
Okay. So dyslexia is a learning disorder with difficulties with reading, writing, and spelling. And it's a neurological condition that affects how the brain processes written and spoken language. And it's either slow or no reading. There's also language processing issues which affect comprehension, and they struggle to follow instructions, and trouble with word retrieval. Dyslexia, dyslexia is a biggie for me because it's affected both my children, and my ex-husband is dyslexic, and my brother's dyslexic. So it seems to be, it seems to have come down in the gene pool. And with Sammy, her alexia was probably the hardest thing for me to deal with, because being a remedial teacher, I had my own school, so no schools would take her. And in fact, I was told to institutionalize her by one of her teachers. And knowing your child, that they are so wise, and everything's in the brain. It just can't come out, especially in the language issues. And so, I tried every reading system known to man. I even went and I spent, I don't know, fortunes of money with people who said they could get her to read. And, teachers would say, I could get a tree to read. I can teach your daughter to read. It never happened. And no school would take her. So I opened my own school called Journey School of Arts for Special Needs, because we called it special needs in those days. And it was through dance, music, singing that Sammy, found her voice. And in fact, we got to, I taught them hip hop because it was about rhythm and movements and getting out all the issues. Anyway, that's another story. Let me just tell you. But, there was no school that would take her. And Christy, with her dyslexia, has learned incredible coping skills. And at 33, Chrissy feels nothing to be working on a document, and whoever's sitting next to her, she'll say, how do you spell this? What does this word mean? You know, she feels nothing to ask. And, you know, that's a coping skill. So the strengths of the dyslexic is beyond reason. They are the most incredible creative thinkers and visual problem solvers. They literally see things in 3D, and they have exceptional spatial reasoning skills. You know, they're the decorators, the architects, the engineers, anything that's creative. They're really big picture thinkers. They can take something and just move it to this big picture. They have pattern recognitions and really, really strong social skills and empathy. They're good public speakers. They have an entrepreneurial spirit. They have incredible leadership skills. And in fact, Christy landed up being a prefect, although her school had huge reasonable accommodation, and she had extra time, and she would write her exams in a separate room, and they embraced the dyslexia and allowed her to shine. And they have huge emotional intelligence. So the dyslexics pretty much are incredibly creative. And they are such a plus in any company. How do we support them in the workspace? Bearing in mind there's a lot of anxiety also with ADHD and with dyslexia, and we need to bear that in mind. So like with ADHD, clear communication is paramount. Break things down in communication. First this, then that, then that, then that. It helps them. Visual aids, again, are important because they see things visually. Reading is not so strong. Flexible working arrangements, again, because of their anxiety and their ability to hyperfocus. And for those of you who don't understand what hyperfocus is, it's a real thing in my family, because both Emile and my husband Jeff will sit in front of their computers. In fact, Sammy's the same. And for hours and hours, they will not look up. And you can talk to them, they don't hear you. So the hyperfocus is a real thing. They will get things done. They will not breathe. They will not drink. They will not eat. They literally hyperfocus. Assistive technology is paramount for them. Text-to-speech is so important. Also, comfortable seating, dim lighting, calm reading and writing conditions, because it takes them so long to decode the reading and writing. It takes them forever to do because that's not their strength. So give them an environment that is calm and where they'll be able to, to do what they need to do. Give them extra time because it takes them so long to read. They need extra time. And important is allow both ADHDers and dyslexics to record meetings. So they can go home and listen to it again, or perhaps go into the toilets and listen to it again, so that they can absorb what's been said. And also, again, educate the staff. Educate people around you. Listen, guys, I'm not going to read this article in 5 minutes. I actually need half an hour. So staff need to understand that. Let me just think if there's anything else about dyslexia sticky notes. I mean, Christy got herself through varsity with sticky notes stuck on cupboards, reminder notes, colors. Using, color sticky notes for them is great because it's visual. They can stick, things into sections in colors. So, yeah, it's a very colorful, graphic condition, and you need to embrace that for dyslexics. Any questions on dyslexia?
None that I can see on the chat. Anybody have a question? I have a hand up. Please go ahead. That's Sue.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Hi, Kim. It's Sue. Sue, my questions are coming because I'm actually situated in a higher education setting. And we are seeing students with the range of non-visible disabilities, like the ones you've explained. What I'm hearing also in terms of support for employees is that in these particular situations, a lot of it is lends itself to flexible working arrangements, like, as you said, comfortable, dim lighting, seating, and so on. So the question is, if the employee is, in the case of employees now, is not disclosing the disability upfront, at the time of coming into the institution, if they've already, lived with this condition for a long time, how, for an employer to now, in terms of determining where would they be best placed in the institution to allow for this kind of flexibility and, working arrangements that you've spoken about that will be most conducive. What are your suggestions? Because then it's almost making me wonder now if certain roles would be, more suited than other roles which are more, structured or limited and doesn't offer as much flexibility.
In terms of the UNCRPD, reasonable accommodation is paramount. And, a person doesn't have to disclose their condition, but we are trying to foster a society where a person feels comfortable in doing so, knowing that their employees are going to support them no matter what. So you need to ask that person what it is that they want. Because as I said before, I cannot tell you what that person needs as an individual, but as I said to you, like my daughter Christy, in a Pilates studio with her ADHD and dyslexia, she's surrounded by people all day, but she's so passionate about what she does, and she has incredible coping skills that she doesn't care about her dyslexia and her ADHD. She does it with her own, and she's phenomenal at it. So to put a person in a role because they have that is not fair. They need to fulfill their purpose. They need to do what they want to do in order to shine and to get your company to shine. So you look at Richard Branson, couldn't read or write. He got somebody to do the reading for him, and he's writing for him, and he has a huge corporation around the world, and it was what he wanted to do, despite his ADHD, despite his dyslexia. He doesn't have ADHD, but he has dyslexia. So you can't put a person in a role because you think that's will be suitable for them because they have ADHD or dyslexia. I hope that helps.
Sorry, Kim, before you go on to the next topic, I'm just looking at time and we're mindful of time. Our session is supposed to finish at 11:30. I just want to find out how many more topics do you have, and do we need to maybe inform our attendees that we may be going over a little bit?
Yes, we're going over. I didn't think this was going to take so long, but I need to get on to autism, and I'll go through it quite quickly.
Okay.
I'll just go straight into it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so autism spectrum disorder is a neurological developmental disorder that affects communication and social interactions and behavior. They have difficulty initiating and maintaining conversations. They struggle to maintain tone and specifically sarcasm. They have delayed or absent language development. And Emile only spoke when he was 15. Sammy only spoke when she was 9. So there is a delayed development of language. They have difficulty understanding social cues, facial expressions, and body language. So you need to be so direct with an autistic person. Direct. This is how I feel. This is what it is. And you need to talk to them. Talk to them. Okay. And they won't, you know, many people won't look you, they won't look you in the eye. They have trouble initiating and maintaining relationships because the communication is an issue. So unless you open a conversation with an autistic person, they will not talk to you, or they will say something that's inappropriate just to open a conversation. They prefer solitary activities because there's huge anxiety. And obviously because communication is hard. They have restrictive and repetitive behaviors and words. So a person will stim, they will shake their hands, they will move their foot, they will spin, they will walk up and down, shaking their hands, stomping, and that regulates. It's a very important behavior for an autistic person to regulate. And they insist on routines and rituals because routines and rituals make them feel safe. They don't like things that come left field. They have sensory sensitivities, which smells, tastes, touch, what else? It's an emotional, sensory condition. And they will have sensory meltdowns where if something's coming at them all at once and the lights are flickering or the lights are too bright and there's funny smells and they're not feeling great, or their shoe itches, or their label scratches, or I don't know, they feel their hair's dirty, whatever. They're not filtered out. They all come at them at once. So a sensory meltdown is when a person will actually have, it looks like a tantrum. For people who are observing it, it's quite a shock at first, but it's a normal sensory meltdown. Allow them to have that meltdown so that they can regulate their bodies and carry on. I'm going fast here, I know, but I need to get through this for you guys. There are co-occurring conditions that happen with autism, and because the spectrum is not linear, but a spiral with many co-occurring conditions thrown in, like ADHD, anxiety disorders, including social anxiety and phobias, depression, OCD, sensory processing disorders, epilepsy, gastrointestinal issues, sleeping disorders, and intellectual disabilities. Others are dyspraxia, dyscalculia, Tourette's, Fragile X, and there are many more. And it's a fact that autism in women presents differently than men. And because of this, so many women and girls are undiagnosed. It's an extremely complex condition because of all these co-occurring conditions. That there's no one size fits all. If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. That's it. There are such intense strengths that come with an autistic person because they have such attention to detail. They don't miss a thing, nothing. They miss nothing. They are analytical thinkers. They are logical, systematic, and excellent problem solvers. You need a problem solved? Go to an autistic person. They are creative, and they're very creative because they bring in innovative perspectives and ideas. The autistic people that I've spent my time with, they surprise me because they think so differently and their ideas are spectacular. They are loyal and dedicated You have an autistic person as your friend, they're your friend for life. And they are dedicated. They're honest. You want to know if your bum looks fat in those pants? Ask an autistic person. They have integrity. They are straightforward and so truthful. They don't lie. They don't lie. So that's autism in a very short little bucket. Okay, I've got 2 minutes. So how do we support them in the workspace? By keeping to routines, by modifying tasks, by quiet workspaces and allowing them to wear headphones, low lighting, visual aids, and simple communication. Break down.
Kim?
Yes?
Sorry, I don't mean to jump in. I know you've still got quite a lot to say, and it's so important that everybody who's here gets to hear it. And so I'm going to ask that if people can stay a little bit longer, please do, because I really want her to do justice to this. Yes, so I do know that we are running over time, but if you can stay, please do. And if you have to leave, the recording will be available. Thanks, Kim. Please continue.
Okay. So low lighting, visual aids, and simple communication. When I mean simple, I mean go down to speaking like a child, because that's when they get it. And that's when they can escalate the brain, okay? Break reminders for them are important because they're very shy and they won't get up and they might not walk past somebody's desk to get to water or coffee. Go and ask them if they'd like a cup of coffee and take them to the coffee machine, and strike up a conversation. How are you today? What are you working on? Because remember, they hyper focus on what they're doing. So don't talk to them about, so how's your dog or whatever. Talk to them about what they're doing because they're so passionate about what they do. Also, adaptive technology is important for them, and a mentorship. Give them somebody who's going to work with them, who really understands what the work entails, and help them grow that project. Because when they take it on, and it's massive, it becomes massive. You look at Elon Musk. You know, he's the typical autistic who's just gone from small to massive because somebody heard him. So, and educating the staff, that's the most important thing, that you have buy-in from them, that they're educated and they understand the potential of this person. Clearly marked rooms and directions, because they become spatially disorientated, and if there's a label on a door that says this is the room that they need to go in, it helps them. And an open door policy, because when a meltdown's going to come and they've got something to say that's on their mind, that door better be open because a meltdown's coming. So yeah, it seems like a lot, but it's actually not. It's just understanding what they need. And I've put there some neurodiverse, famous neurodiverse people like Elon Musk, the guy who created Pokemon, Susan Boyle, Dan Aykroyd, Howie Mandel, Richard Branson, Steven Spielberg, and that's dyslexia. You can perhaps read them all in your own time. But there are people out there that just rise because they've had support. So my question to you is why, sorry, let me go back. Let's go back to autism. Any questions about autism before I move on to why you would employ a neurodiverse person?
I saw a question from David. He was asking, is it Jaron? David was asking, are autism and ADHD genetic or from birth? So I think this really speaks to the whole, are they acquired or not acquired conditions?
So ADHD is a genetic thing passed down through the family. It is thought that autism is passed down in a gene. And I don't want to get into the science of it because that's not my forte. But my thought personally, yes, It is a genetic thing. It's from birth. It's how your brain is created. You're born with that neural pathway, and that is your brain. You can't change it. You can't cure it. That is how it is. It's not like CPTSD, where you can work with those neural pathways to change it. These are set in stone. This is who they are. This is their personality. You can't be, people say, you have autism. No, I don't have autism. It's not a disease. I am autistic. I was born autistic. My brain is this way, and that's how it is. So I hope that question's answered.
I believe so. Is there another hand that wants to pop up? Nothing.
No?
But just, just
Okay.
in passing though, it's funny that, the well-known people under dyslexia, they are mostly actors or authors, like James Patterson,
Yeah.
he's an author,
Yeah.
and Whoopi. So, I mean, these people are reading and reading scripts all the time and memorizing lines. So
Yeah.
this speaks to us not really putting people where we think they belong, but really focusing on their strengths, right?
Yes, absolutely. And they're creatives. So they will,
Mhm.
Chrissy had a teacher at Markham Waldorf who said, I'm not going to mark you down on your spelling and your grammar. I want you to tell me the story. I can read dyslexia. And that taught me a lot, because I myself can read dyslexia. I don't care about spelling and grammar. Just tell me the story. I want to hear it. So that's the interesting thing about dyslexia, I must say. So can I go on about why we should employ neurodiverse individuals?
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So it increases innovation, because they come with fresh perspectives and ideas. It improves production, because these people are hyper-focused, truly hyper-focused. They enhance problem solving, and because they approach things from a different angle. You will have better decision making, because they are objective and data driven and insightful. You will have creative thinking. You will have attention to detail. You will have analytical thinking. You will have artistic and design skills. Dedicated workers. They're not going to leave. They have a strong work ethic, because they take pride in what they do. And you will have job retention, because these people don't leave. They're so invested in their work, and they have unique insights. And you will have access to an untapped talent pool. And it will enhance your reputation, because you have commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And companies who employ neurodiverse individuals like Microsoft, SAPS, IBM, Google, and Ernst & Young. They are in the forefront of the neurodiversity movement. So by embracing neurodiversity, employers gain a competitive edge, foster innovation, and create a more inclusive work environment. And I thank you all so much for listening to my long, very complex view of neurodiversity today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. But like it is, neurodivergence is complex. And so I think you have done justice to really getting us to understand where it is really, where it sits, what it is, and people really getting to not just see the bad and the and the gloom and the doom. Oh, we don't know how to cope with them, we don't know how to cope with them, but really to show the light on the strengths that we have. And the truth is, stats have shown that organizations that are far more neurodivergent are 40% far more productive than their counterparts. So it really is about bringing a really diverse and creative pool. DEIB implemented in the workplace is really about innovation, getting people to be active, and creating and problem solving to drive change, but also to solve the problems that businesses are there to solve, and to serve communities in that way. So thank you so much for coming. I am going to open it up for, there you go, good to see you, even though you're blurry. So I'm going to open it up for questions again. If anybody has questions, please pop them or ask them to Kim while she's still here. You're free to drop your email address if you're not in our mailing list, because I know some of you caught the link in the great ether, so please drop it, or just email me. I'll drop my email address here, and then, you know, if you need help and you want to follow up with our guests, you can, you know, we'll link you up and you can continue that conversation. So I'm just going to drop my email here, and any last questions, please feel free to ask while Kim is still here. What we will also do is, in response to this, we will also give a summary of the questions and answers that were given here. And then we will also share a document, the publication, yes, the one that Dr. Emile wrote. I have to brag, I was the first in the country to read it. Wait, actually in the world, yes. I was the first to read it, so thank you for that privilege. And I will share it with you. It's a brilliant piece of understanding the barriers that people with impairments face in an institution, and the kind of problem solving that we have to undergo right at the entry of that institutional entry. So it's a fantastic paper. So I'll definitely share that in the follow-up email. So please, if you are not in our email address, pop it in here. Otherwise, you will miss the publication and sharing the, you know, future resources. Last chance for questions? Nothing? Thank you so much, Kim. Oh, yes, I've got a hand. Please go ahead. Sue?
Thank you, thank you. Just linking back to earlier, what I was saying is, we know that disability disclosure is voluntary. I remember, King, you were saying that the person doesn't have to disclose. So there was a question I popped earlier asking, how will the employer know that they need to accommodate if the employee doesn't actually then disclose? So I'm looking at it in terms of disclosure, not just for the sake of reporting from an employment equity perspective, but for the employer then to have that disclosure to know how many employees you do have with disabilities, but also to open the door to the discussions to the disability inclusion and the potential reasonable accommodations. And earlier, may have been misinterpreted, because it's not about saying that when the person discloses at the outset that they be boxed into a certain role. What I actually am saying is that if the person, as we spoke about the challenges faced with the different diagnoses around neurodiversity, needs to be in a particular space that allows them to thrive as much as possible and for their creativity to come out, as opposed to putting them in a role, for example, like the one I gave earlier, where they're in the front line, constantly busy, people coming at you, and that overstimulation may not be the best for the individual. Then in the interest of the individual, to place them where they will thrive and be able to show off their strengths. So that's what I just needed clarity on, because as far as how we operate, an employer is not obligated to reasonably accommodate if the individual has not done a disclosure, and of course then indicated what their needs are.
Sue, sorry, I misinterpreted that. Yeah, as I apologize for that. As I said, only the policies in the company need to be that of disability inclusion, where the employee feels safe enough to disclose their condition, because people with invisible disabilities are so scared that you're going to say no. But if you foster inclusion and you have a culture of inclusion, the person will feel safe enough to tell you, yes, I have a condition, and this is my requirements. These are my reasonable accommodations.
I think that's true. You really, and I think people don't, I think we need to really understand that we are talking about personal issues. There is no way I'm coming to you and disclosing, for example, that I was gang raped with somebody that I do not trust or feel safe with or feel attacked or judged, and then hope that you will receive my pain with kindness and then help me. So we've got to understand that in order for that disclosure, a certain culture of safety and compassion has got to be built. We've got another hand. Please go ahead. I think it's Rachel.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much, and good morning to everybody. Kim, this has been very informative, and thank you so much. In your presentation, you've mentioned quite a number of, I'm going to call them symptoms or signs that you might have certain mental illnesses. So as a person sitting here and listening to you, what would be the first step to do, or the first step to take in order to get a I don't want to say proper, but a diagnosis of some of the illnesses mental illnesses that you've mentioned here today? Thank you.
Okay, so just to correct you there, they're not mental illnesses, okay? They're neurological differences.
Thank you so much for that. Neurological differences.
Yeah.
Point. Thank you.
Yeah, we're neurodiverse. We have different brains. And sorry, what was the question? I'm so ADD. You have to just help me. What was the question again?
Okay, I suppose my question would be if I'm hearing, or if after hearing what you, yes, that's right. Yeah.
So it's important for people to get a diagnosis, because unless you have a diagnosis, you just feel so isolated and there's something wrong with me as a person. So getting a diagnosis the first thing to do is and the great thing is we have the Neurodiversity Center at UJ. That would probably be my first port of call. A psychologist or psychiatrist, they can diagnose you. I don't advocate for going to a GP, because you want that official diagnosis. You want that piece of paper, because if you have that piece of paper, you then, and that's where the UNCRPD document comes in, because if you have a disability, any disability, it's required. South Africa signed the paper in 2008. It is required for an employee to give reasonable accommodation. So that's why it's important. So my first port of call, Neurodiversity Center, psychologists, psychiatrists, or even neurologists. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. It does. Thank you.
This has been great. I see we still have a lot of people who are still here, Kim. They, want to suck all the juices of wisdom out of you. If there are any more questions? Kim, as you were talking around, about some of these conditions. Oh, please go ahead, John.